We know George Strait as an extremely successful and honored country musician. His marriage to Norma has lasted for almost 50 years now. He seems to be perfect. But the life of Norma and George is clouded by grave tragedies. Here's the dire truth that lies behind an unblemished reputation. Not a fairy tale romance. Norma and George grew up in the same town in Texas. The two even attended the same high school, so it was a common thing to meet daily. They never really thought of each other as anything more than friends. But one day, George noticed how this familiar girl had actually turned into a very attractive young woman. He could not get Norma out of his head, and finally dared to ask her on a date. It was romantic, sweet, but that's all. George never asked her out again. The two returned to the friend zone, and it seemed to be the end of the story. The reunion. Years went by, but Norma and George did not even see each other. Instead of Norma, George was falling in love with country music. He played with his band and deeply dived into his career. But once he met Norma with another guy, the jealousy had suddenly overcome him. Somehow, George thought that Norma would always be close to him in their town, so he thought he'd always have the opportunity to get back with her. George realized that he was going to lose the girl of his dreams if he didn't fight for her right at that moment. So he did. Luckily, Norma had the heart to welcome him back into her life, and they started dating again. This time, George didn't step out. He did everything right and confessed that Norma was the first girl he ever loved. After a short time, the sweethearts exchanged their wedding vows in Mexico when they were just 19. A new family was formed and it looked like a happy start, but life took a different direction. Right after the wedding, George enlisted in the U.S. Army and was shipped off to Hawaii. A family nest. It was hard for both of them to remain together, but they managed to make it through. Within a year, Norma gave birth to their first little angel, a girl they named Jennifer Lynn. 9 years later, they had another baby, a boy, George Bubba Strait Jr. It was the golden years for their family nest. George, together with his army band called Ramblin' Country, scored his first chart-making single, Unbound. His career started to bring home real money, and George felt he was having the ride of his life. No one could expect the tragedy that ended their happy times. The tragedy that changed it all. Tragedy struck on June 25, 1986. Jennifer was riding in a car with her friends on the road to San Marcos when the car turned sharply to a side road, skidded and flipped, landing on its roof in a ditch. None of the occupants of the car were wearing seat belts, and Jennifer Strait was partially thrown out. The sunshine of the family, little Jennifer, tragically died on the scene. She was only 13. Though George has refused to talk publicly about the painful incident, in 2012 he told People he and Norma were blessed to have been able to spend 13 years with our beautiful daughter. George tried to get back on his feet, diving into his work, and Norma was a stay-at-home mom until Bubba started college at Texas A&M University. After that, Norma joined George on the road until he retired from touring. Being together hand in hand through hard times made them much stronger, and music slowly healed the wounds. Together through bad and good times. The Straits will celebrate 47 years of marriage in 2018. Norma and I are so blessed that we found each other, and we're able to do all of this together, experience this life together, to support each other through everything, good times and bad. These days, George and Norma are enjoying a new blessing as grandparents. They have a great big family and still strongly love each other.